this one's not for the light of heart. No, that's not what I was going for.
I see what you were doing there, though, and I like it.
But I could do better.
I mean, we all can. It's fine. No worries.
Yeah.
If
only I had hindsight. But anyway.
None of us do, so it's fine. I think it goes without saying. This episode is going to be completely rife with spoilers, but I cannot recommend enough that if you haven't seen the show, definitely check it out first and come back to us, because it is the kind of show that is detrimented by spoilers, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It has those reveal moments that are helped by the not knowing ahead of time. So if you do
or
seem
the unknown,
to be
as it is,
or the unknown, very very apt. But yeah, I would say check out the show, come back to us, because it's a good one. I would also say it's not the kind of show that you binge either. It's so meaty and heavy that I would say kind of maybe just watch the first season, take a beat before you go into the second, and let yourself absorb it, because it's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a series that I became very obsessed with when it was announced in 2017, all those many years ago. It seems weird to say that was as long ago as it was.
I know, yeah. I don't know if obsessed is the right word. You got to give me something stronger than that. Like,
I'm in a whole other stratosphere of obsession with this show, because
I started your own religious cult over this thing. No,
I got other people obsessed with this show too, and like I had people coming to me for like, dude, what the hell is this? Like, explain this to me, because it doesn't make any sense. Just calm down. Just sit down. I feel like Dennis in Sunny when he's like, I'm gonna get everybody what they want. Like, and then like the classical music spins. But no, I really do genuinely love this show. It's probably my personal favorite TV series, which is
of all time, or certainly of the last decade, but
definitely of the last, maybe of all time. You know, those are difficult scales.
I know,
to judge,
but it's definitely up there.
Definitely up there. Definitely in my top 5. We'll say, you know, it's one that has just like encapsulated that like research side of my brain, because one of the great things about the show is it does not spoon feed its details to you. It really kind of makes you dig to find the meat and potatoes, as it were.
Well, and that was we'll get into it. Make a mental note here to remind me to say something, because that was interesting what you said. It doesn't spoon feed you.
Yeah,
but it also keeps it simple, I think, at least in the first season. But yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What are we discussing today?
So yeah, to give everybody what we're doing here, we're going to do our first like actual deep dive series of episodes where we're going to kind of spread things out. I guess we kind of did with Frank Herbert, but that was like a more simplistic version. What we're going to do is, since Dark is only 3 seasons or cycles, as the showrunners refer to it as, we're going to do an episode on each of these 3 cycles, and we're going to do it in 2 weeks, because I know I don't want to obsess our show with something that people may not be interested in. So if you do, it's only 2 weeks if it's something you're not into. So we'll get through all 3 seasons of this here, but that way I know I've already had people message us, because I put a little something out, and I got some people excited that we're finally doing this. So yeah, it should be fun. I'm going to go through as much material as I can. I have enough to cover this for many, 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 many hours beyond what we're going to do. So.
A manifesto.
Yeah.
From what you've told me.
Yeah. And I'm sure from our outline, that's like the outline is the most basic form of this I could have given you. It's still a lot, I admit. But
man, it's like a club sandwich on top of a breakfast buffet of information here.
And I've probably seen, once I watched through too, I also got, one of the only times I've gotten into a show before it started. Like, I was hyped up for it to start airing.
Yeah.
So I can't think of another series I got into before it started like this. So I was kind of on the train before it started. And, I didn't even watch any of the trailers.
The conductor's like, what are you doing here, man?
I didn't even watch any of the trailers past that first teaser, because I was like, I don't want to know anymore. This looks amazing. I want it. So I dove into it, and I got a scary amount of people involved along the way.
Very strange. Frank Herbert would be sad. You are.
I've put researching into a whole other level of padded room here. But yeah, there's 10 episodes to this first season.
Yes.
It is a German series. It was shot in Germany. The showrunner, Baron Bo Odar, and his writing aficionado, Jantje Friesen, she wrote the bulk of the series. She was at least like a co-writer on every single episode.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a few that Martin Benke took the lead on, and there were several other writers in their writers' rooms. So it was very much a collaborative effort across multiple people. But like Baron and Jantje were like definitely the two forefront thinkers on like the whole methodology of the series. And there's deep, rich use of philosophy throughout the course of the series as well. A lot of the introductory quotes for many episodes by famous philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche, Schopenhauer. We had a few from Albert Einstein, H.G. Wells, Schrödinger, Carl Jung, Isaac Newton, and Gottfried Leibniz that just bring a very profound sense of theme to a lot of the episodes and tie them into reality, as we've said before, that has a way of grounding storytelling, and the more you can worm it into reality.
Yeah, and what was it? This real quick. I think this came out right around when Stranger Things started too.
And that's like the really unfortunate parallel that was drawn because of the very first episode was about like kids romping through the woods with flashlights, looking in a cave. I was like, all right, that's like the only thing people are drawing that comparison for. But like throughout the entirety of the internet, everybody referred to it as German Stranger Things, which
I think is unfair for
past that first episode. There is no comparison really.
And I'll once you're done, I don't want to derail what you were doing there.
No, yeah.
But yeah, we'll get back to that. Sidebar again. I'm all disjointed.
No, that's fine.
Because there's so much to unpack. I don't know where
It is a disjointed series, so it is perfectly fine. But yeah, like I said, there's 10 episodes. As I told you in ramping up for this, I watched through the entire series and I not only made an outline, but I did. I'm counting here real quick. I did 18 full pages of handwritten notes just on my rewatch of the series.
I can neither confirm or deny that you did 18 pages, but I believe it.
I didn't dare send them to you. It's my handwritten chaos as I've given to you before. So as you can imagine, it's just quite chaotic. But yes, so to get into the plot of the series, like to give a broad strokes overview of what Dark is, at least in this first season, it becomes many things. But in this first season, there's already a child missing from this fictional town of Winden. It is not a real place that exists. For the series, it was something that was created. And there are children that are going missing. By the time we start the series, the kid, Eric Obendorf, has already gone missing. There's already a police investigation underway to try and figure out what happened to him. And as the series progresses, more and more children go missing, and it's unexplained what is happening to them. And we get like the smallest nuggets of information as to what is going on.
Yeah.
But as we get little pieces of information, we learn that there is something extra normal going on through time travel. We become aware that there is as they refer to it in the show multiple times, it is a crack in time in that cave.
Yeah. And yes, a fissure almost.
Yeah. And we do learn in this first season how that comes to be, but they are mainly using this crack in time in these caves to travel back and forth. And in certain cases, perceivedly by mistake at certain points.
Yeah.
The first character that we are essentially introduced to is Michael Kahnwald. Michael Kahnwald kills himself in the very first scene that we meet him.
Yeah.
That sets the tone for what the series is. This is not, going to be a Disney flick. This is something that's very, very dark in tone, obviously by the title, and does not pull its punches in any sense of the word.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, like, just I'll spit it out so I don't have to keep remembering what I was kind of alluding to earlier when I said that Stranger Things comparison and all that. One thing I actually think that this does well is by starting off in that same way. Because of how complex and just out there and trippy this is going to get. I'm assuming the creators, especially the writers, understood that, okay, if we're going to get people hooked, we have to give them something sort of fresh, sort of familiar and fresh in the beginning, and then slowly start to reveal what the true story is about.
Yeah.
So this is a good lesson in world building, I would say.
Very much so.
You never want to front load or, I just like, put that encyclopedia entry into almost any story nowadays, but especially a visual one like a TV series or a movie.
Yeah.
Credit you have more time in a TV series, but yeah, you have to let that come out naturally through the story. And with all this information they have to get across to you, it was, I do think it was a masterstroke of understanding, like, okay, we're going to start with the things that people are that tend to like click in everyone's minds, like, oh, okay, I recognize that kind of, aspect of the story, kids go missing, kids in the woods,
like a typical crime story.
What happened. Yeah. So as much as like you were saying how people like compared that to Stranger Things because it came out at the same time, whether or not this was made, whether or not they were shooting it exactly at the same time, I'm not sure, but it definitely...
Stranger Things was definitely first on the scene.
Yeah,
they were back in summer of 2016 was when Stranger Things released. This released in the last moments of 2017.
Okay. But yeah, no, I think that opening in the beginning,
yeah,
the simple setup is perfect because you need you're going to unpack this thing, and so we got to start off simple. Otherwise, you would get lost way too quickly.
Also, like, it tells you that this is a different kind of story. Like, this is way deeper down the depression spiral than a lot of things. And it lets you know that from the word go, which, like, if this isn't your cup of tea, you're definitely going to know it from the word go.
Oh, yeah.
But like what I kind of like, some of the things I like about it, it's the blend of a lot of my favorite things. It's, it's Back to the Future meets Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like it's that kind of area. And as we get deeper down the spiral of the story, Michael Kahnwald kills himself, as we said, and he leaves a note behind. That sets the immediate tone for how this is going to go. And then we immediately jump cut to his son, Jonas Kahnwald, waking several months later. And we gradually learn that he's been away from school. He's been outside of his friend group. He's, as he describes it, been in the nut house for several months dealing with the depression of his father, completely inexplicably killing himself, as it's described. He showed no signs of depression, no sign of leading towards that. He just one day out of the blue, no explanation, kills himself.
Yeah.
And as we see, it is, we see it happen. He is the one who kills himself. It's not like he was murdered and was covered up. It's like he does do it by his own hands. So
yeah,
it's a curious thing. It already gets, your mind turning from that first scene. And also the intro sequence for this show is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
The kaleidoscope effect that is utilized like sets that tone of like, storylines being intercrossed and, eventually as we come to understand that it's actual timelines being intersected simultaneously, and that the song that is utilized for the intro sequence is also popularized by the series Breaking Bad.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
It is the last song that we hear before Gus Fring meets his final demise.
Interesting. All right.
So that was one of the things that actually led to the popularity of the show, was people like caught on to it because, oh, that's that song from Breaking Bad. So so that was where like a lot of its initial glitz and glamour came from.
I gotcha.
But yeah, and we see a lot of these vermissed missing posters of Eric Obendorf. That leads us down into the police investigation for what's going on with the kid. We meet Ulrich Nielsen. He's the lead detective on that case, trying to figure this out.
This is definitely an ensemble piece too. Even
oh my
though
gosh,
there are
yeah,
more characters who you could put closer to the protagonist role. There are a lot of characters in this.
It's very tough to follow. It's a who's who kind of thing, and it gets very difficult to follow, especially given that, for our audience, it's an English speaking audience trying to understand a German spoken TV series. Even if you watch it in English, I've watched it both in German and in English, and there is a translation barrier between. You get a very different sense of the story between how you watch it. So it's, there's a lot missed.
I was just gonna say, what would you recommend? Would you recommend the dubbed version or the German with subtitles?
Now, I would say this is not simple is you get more of the performance and the inflection watching the spoken German, but there is a lot of clarity added from hearing the dubs with the captions over top of that. So that I think honestly watching it multiple ways is where you're going to get the most understanding of things.
So it's almost like if you're going to watch it for the first time, maybe watch it in the German first, and then the English dub kind of gives you that extra little analytical layer to it.
Yeah. Like if there's stuff you missed, it may be worth going back and watching the English dubs. I think for the performance sake, it's very worth watching it in German, paying attention and reading off the screen. That goes with a lot of dubbed materials. I would always say watch with captions just because you're getting the actor's natural performance. But yeah, as we meet and understand Ulrich, we learn the state of the Nielsen family. We get to know. We also, first time we meet Ulrich, we learn that he's cheating on his wife Katarina with Hannah Conwald, who is Jonas's mother. Do. Yeah, and it also leads us down that spiral. This is a dark story. Like this is not going to be happy themes. This is not going to be something that's generally uplifting. This is going to be more of a cathartic type of series. Yeah,
this is one. I never know. Again, another one that I'd put up there is like I don't know if you're ever going to be emotionally in the mood to watch it, but yeah, it's just one of those where you just got to watch it.
Yeah, and it's definitely one that spurs like the analytical side of my brain. I can only speak from my personal experience watching the show. I just love analyzing this show because there is so much there to dig into.
Yeah, this is a terrible comparison, but it's the level of depth and sophistication, for lack of a better term, that I think Lost should have been.
Yeah. That was kind of where I got with it too. Was I constantly looked at it as getting the formula of Lost 100% correct.
Yeah.
Like it was showing you like the what the hell moments, but then like behind those what the hell moments, there's a lot of mechanics going on that make sense.
Yes, it makes sense. It doesn't feel like it was the writers in the room, let's throw it up against the wall, see what sticks, and then try and explain it away later.
A lot of the times I would joke watching Lost saying there would be like a scene where like they walk into the woods, there's a refrigerator, and then like Santa Claus walks out and we'll just say some absurd line that made no sense and then cut the black like that and then Lost. Like just something
no,
totally
I mean that became a thing too. I don't think Lost has stuck around as much in our minds.
It's definitely still popularized. I know a lot of people who still I do still have love for a lot of people hate Lost.
I don't hate it.
I
wasn't me saying hate it, but I feel like there were some missed opportunities with it.
There's some luster that's been lost.
Credit to we're talking. This is Netflix. That was ABC. That was broadcast television. So you always gotta. And that was 20 years ago.
That was also America. We're talking about Germany.
Yeah, big difference. But anyway, yes,
huge difference. Huge. Let's get into it for a minute about just the cinematography and the score, which are both utterly phenomenal throughout the entire run of this series. Ben Frost, the composer who did the score for this, we were talking to Jordan last week about like seeing artists on Instagram and getting to be able to communicate with them and stuff. I've actually had conversations with Ben Frost on Instagram. The dude's phenomenal. Yeah. Like he's like very old school, just like doodles with synthesizers on his desk. Like there were moments like leading up to the third season being released. Like you could see he had like the most basic, you could buy them off the shelf synthesizers running like certain layers of the score. And like the dude's just great. He also worked on several series since then. He was on Raised by Wolves with Ridley Scott about there was a futurism thing. But yeah, phenomenal dude. And the cinematography, they shot all on the digital Arri Alexa 65 millimeter, the highest digital format that you could shoot on at the time. They're doing and lighting it perfectly. Like the lighting setups alone, I can't even like say enough about visually for this series. Is just incredible. But definitely a huge source of inspiration. One of the big reasons why I'm obsessed with the show is how it's lit. But
definitely, no, I've always been interested in your take on the cinematography of this show.
That's partly why I kept coming back to it and couldn't put it down, was beyond like the analytical side of how this show's written and, the inner mechanics behind the screen of how this was all put together. Like just even like the visuals of this and the visual effects too. Like the power plant doesn't exist. Everywhere you see the power plant, it has been added. Like
Yeah.
the stacks don't exist. Like they're constantly adding those in frame. And if nobody told you that, you wouldn't know, because it's honest to God, it looks that good most of the time it's on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did such a great job, especially later. Like we'll get into it in the third episode, but there's a lot of great things that go into the visual effects in the third season too.
Yeah.
Can't say enough about the visuals and the sound design, especially for this series. Just utterly phenomenal. Beyond Ben Frost's work, like the sound teams, everything technically about this show is utterly top notch, and its edit is paced perfectly. Like we were talking before about how, you know, they convey a lot of information concisely and quickly. It's you look at how some of these scenes are cut together. They get around to the exact amount of information conveyed, in and out, snap, go, constantly. There isn't a single wasted frame in this series, and I think that speaks volumes to its quality. It's not screwing around. It's not wasting time. There's no redundant information conveyed unless it's for a purpose. Like there are some red herrings here and there, but they're for a purpose.
Yeah. And it's done through the way the characters are living the world.
Yeah.
One of the things that's a struggle, or kind of like one of the golden things when it comes to writing like a book, especially if like a fantasy or science fiction story, is how it's like if you want to describe a glass of water or an object or something, if you can describe it through the way that the character in this world would, then you've reached a gold standard of storytelling, because you're getting everything out in one sentence, one paragraph. You're getting the character, you're getting the plot, you're getting the world, you're getting the conflict, the drama, all of it's coming out in that particular just little statement that you can get. And that, I would say, Dark has the equivalency of that in the TV serial form.
Yeah. Moving forward with some of the characters here, let's break it down to families, because I think that's where this is most easily explained, and where I think it covers a lot of the ground that's helpful to people who maybe miss a step here and there. It's like I said, this is very much, especially in this first season, it's a who's who of trying to figure out what all this is. So there's the Kahnwald family. We meet Michael Kahnwald initially going into this, and he's the one who kills himself in that very first scene. His son, Jonas Kahnwald.
Spoilers in case you have
spoilers in case you didn't make it a minute into the show.
Yeah.
In that first episode. But yeah, like we were talking about the family structures.
Yeah, we're in the Kahnwald family right now.
Yeah, talking about Hannah Kahnwald, Michael's wife, when she's having an affair with Ulrich, and she is clearly like infatuated with Ulrich. We learned through the course of the series that she pulled some shady stuff on Ulrich in high school that he doesn't know about until late into this season, that she actually convicted him of rape by falsely accusing him in an official police report. And he spends several days in jail as a result of that. Their son, Jonas Kahnwald, is kind of the main character of the series, I would say. Pretty officially, he's the main character.
Yeah.
Then we have the Tiedemann family going way back to the 50s. Egon Tiedemann is the first of note through that family. His daughter, Claudia, becomes the head of the power plant in the 80s. Her daughter, Regina, marries Alexander, who takes her name. So Alexander and Regina Tiedemann, their son, Bartosz Tiedemann, is Jonas's best friend. That is a lot to follow.
Try to keep up here.
Yeah. So I do recommend, there are actual family trees of the series. And once you've seen everything, I encourage looking at that.
This one definitely has a Lord of the Rings level of backstory and world building going on.
It's pretty crazy.
In terms of the lore. This is a sci-fi show that has a lot of lore to it and plays well with it. But the lore isn't necessarily, I would say the difference is there's a lot of lore in like Lord of the Rings that's there to help make the world feel real and doesn't necessarily bear any interaction to the main plot going on.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like every little piece of lore, for the most part, I'd say at least 90% of it that I can think of is put back into the story.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say about 90%. Like I said, there's the occasional red herring that is like intentionally made to throw the audience off of a certain path. But I would say about 90% of everything that's in the series comes back to some level of importance. That moves us on to the Doppler family. Bernd Doppler is the earliest that we meet in the 50s. He is the creator of the power plant plant. He's the one who pushes nuclear energy forward in Winden. And that becomes the economic center of the entire town. And he is the father of Helga Doppler, who is as we learn, is the right hand of Noah, the very mysterious figure who we do not know who he is in this first season. And I will not spoil that until we get to that information is relevant. But he and Helga and Noah do their whole thing. And Helga is the father of Peter Doppler, who is married to Charlotte Doppler, who we do not know what her actual parental origins are at this point. And her adoptive grandfather is H.G. Tannhaus, who in the 80s runs a clock shop, also in the 50s runs a clock shop. But he is the writer of the book Journey Through Time, which is very relevant to the series. We've actually brought up Journey Through Time in our time travel episode as the book that is brought back in time and given to its author. So it raises the question of who actually wrote the book. We get the idea of the bootstrap paradox many times over. The book is just one of those. Several of the names that are presented, we find out through the course of the series, have a similar effect going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's that weird thing of like, is the loop always there? How does the loop start? You know what I mean? How do you create a loop?
It has a cause and effect.
Question of like, how do you get something out of nothing? Really, I think it's like, how does like you're going through a loop here, and not to jump ahead, but I jumped ahead a little bit. But
jump ahead away.
But how? Yeah, it brings up. There's a lot of questions that it asks outside the world of the show and the story, and saying like, how do you get something out of nothing? How does life exist if at one point it didn't? So how does this time loop happen before? See, I can't even come up with the question because it's so difficult.
It's tricky, which is therein lies my obsession of trying to get answers to these questions. But to get a little bit more into the plot here, what takes the kids into the woods to the cave in the first place is Eric was into drugs, into selling drugs. They go there. This
kids
group
are. As kids,
as you know, it's 2019 in the course of the series at this point.
Yes.
So it is what it is. But Bartosz becomes obsessed with going to find Eric's stash, which he knows is in the woods. He knows where it is and where to get it. And if Eric's not there to protect it and cover it, he's like, I can just take it, and then we're golden.
Yeah.
So he gets his group of friends, which includes Jonas, Martha Nielsen, who is Ulrich's daughter, Ulrich and Katarina's daughter. She is kind of the love interest of Jonas. We get the sense that something was kind of going on with the two of them before his father killed himself and he had to, quote unquote, go to the nut house. But Bartosz kind of stepped in and started a relationship with Martha while he was gone. So he's kind of forced out of that situation.
Yeah.
So much information. It's so quick and easy to get lost. The kids were going into the woods to find the drugs. They go there. They hear a noise in the cave that scares all of them. They run off in different directions. Mikkel, who is Ulrich's youngest child, just to put it on the table here too, there's a lot of family tree to get through here. Ulrich's children are Magnus, his oldest son, Martha, the middle daughter, and Mikkel, his youngest son. In the chaos of running away from the sound in the cave, they lose track of Mikkel. Jonas is the one who actually loses him.
Yeah.
And they reconvene at the bridge in the rain. They all go, where's Mikkel? They run off, try to find him. Eventually, the police are notified. Mikkel is listed as an officially missing person.
Yeah.
But as we come to learn through the course of the next several episodes, Mikkel was actually made his way into the cave and is now in the year 1986.
Yes.
He has no idea how to get back because he didn't figure out how to get back through the cave. Initially, he just didn't assume anything was different. He just went to go home.
Yeah.
He goes home and he meets his father and his mother when they're teenagers, and they make fun of him.
Not much has changed.
Yeah. Ulrich, as a teenager, this is the same period of time that his younger brother, Mads, has also gone missing. So we're getting the sense that across these multiple timelines, a crime is being committed simultaneously across this span of 33 years.
Yeah.
33-year increments between 1953, 1986, and 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlotte describes the cycle of 33 years to Ulrich, and we later get additional context for this from H.G. Tannhaus to The Stranger, and it basically describes that the world is out of sync slightly from the way our calendar model is, and it's only that every 33 years things are actually mathematically synchronized to what they're supposed to be. So there's that coupled with the way that the crack in time in the cave created by the wormhole intersects. Each is actually 33-year increments, further backing this theory. And it has ties to religious implications and many other number 23 level speculations, and goes into a whole other tangent of theories. So that's like the connective tissue there. And as like you have to think about it, like all three timelines are moving forward at the same pace day by day.
Yeah.
So it's like they're all kind of synchronized.
Yeah. It also too, I would stress sometimes that too. It's weird because it invites you to think about it, but also I say sometimes you kind of have to not think about it because you might think about it too much that it'll take some of the enjoyment out of the show.
Yeah, like if you take too much thought into it,
while you're watching it. I mean, while you're watching it.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And it takes away from those big moments that I was referring to before.
Yeah, save the sleuthing for after you've finished.
Yeah, going through, that's, we were talking about the Doppler family. Helga is the youngest of the Dopplers. Bernd, his father, the one who created the power plant and is striving for nuclear energy in Winden in 53. Helga grows up as a young child in 1953. He's a substantial adult in 1986, but we're getting inklings that, life hasn't really turned out great for him. He has a scarred ear in 1986 that we don't know how it happened. He's fine in 1953. And when we see him in 2019, he is in an old folks' home babbling about it will happen again, and being very incoherent and not making much sense. He actually interrupts the town meeting trying to gain some sense and warning about the disappearance of Eric Obendorf in the first episode. And there's a lot of information to get through. I don't know that we're going to get through everything. I'm trying to glass over as much as I can here.
Well, it's like one of that. I'll just sum it up from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban when he's like, I knew I could do it this time because I've already done it. Does that make sense? And Hermione's like, no.
Exactly. No, but like the mechanics of the series, like when you're a super insane person like me and actually like go through and methodically break them down, they do make a perfectly logical sense.
They do. Yes. No. Yes.
But it does take a lot of brain bending and researching to get there. I was in the Doppler family. We get to Peter Doppler, who is actually Jonas's psychiatrist, who's helping him deal with the events of his father's suicide. That's how we learn initially that Jonas was in the quote-unquote nut house.
Yeah.
And there's something shady about Peter through the entirety of the first season. We get the sense that something's off and he's hiding something. His wife, Charlotte, is actually leading the investigation. She is like the head of the police department. She's fully leading the investigation of the missing children. And now that, Mikkel has been listed as an official missing person, Ulrich is losing his mind and trying to find his son.
Mm-hmm.
As things progress, we learn that Charlotte's two daughters, Charlotte's youngest daughter, Elizabeth, as she states, and my boyfriend, Yazin, she, forgive me, my brain's going a mile a minute. Yazin is the next of the children to be taken. And for a hot second, we actually think that Elizabeth was taken. But then when she is found, she comes home hours late, inexplicably. And she explains to her mother that she was with a man called Noah.
Mm-hmm. Who I think hasn't even been mentioned until this moment, correct?
But I'm pretty sure that that's the first time that he's mentioned.
Yeah.
And she gives a description of Noah to her mother. We slowly learn that Noah is our deepest connection to what's going on. Like whoever he is, whatever he's doing, he's closest to the source of what's happening that we are aware of.
Yeah.
As we come to learn later on through the course of the series, that it is actually Noah and Helga co-conspiring to move the children around. At least to some degree. Like as far as we understand, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Michael Kahnwald leaves a letter behind for Jonas, but is not found by Jonas. It somehow ends up into the possession of Ines Kahnwald, who is Michael's mother. And this letter explains that as we come to learn through several episodes into the series, that Mikkel, who is the little boy that Jonas lost in the woods and his friend from his friend group at school, is actually his biological father who went back in time and never came home and lived out his entire life down the street as Jonas's father. And if Mikkel is Jonas's father, then Ulrich is his grandfather, making Martha, whom he's in love with, his aunt.
They pull a little bit of Terminator there.
Yeah. And in the second episode, we are introduced to another character only known as the Stranger.
Yes.
The Stranger is clearly deeply involved in time travel. He has an entire suitcase of notes and information about the process of time travel, about the intimate details of where the kids have gone. He's asking the direct question, where is Mikkel? It's actually largely suspect early on in the series that the Stranger is Mikkel before we learn that he is Michael Conwald.
Mm-hmm.
But that obviously is not the case.
Yeah, this is definitely a show. I don't want to use the term soap opera because I know that gets like a bad.
But it is of that cloth. It's like the most intense soap opera of all time.
Yeah. Because you got the families, you've got all these things happening. It reminds me of that, at least structurally in some ways.
Yes,
and I don't mean that as like a negative.
But it is an apt description because it's about the families. It's about how everything's interconnected. It is largely about the interpersonal drama of things.
Yeah.
So that's a very fair description. But we also learned that there's a lot of shady things about Tronte Nielsen, who is Ulrich's father. There's a lot of things like we come to learn that he wasn't present the night of Mads' disappearance, his son, Ulrich's brother, and that his wife, Jana, actually lied on the official police report saying that he was there. And when Ulrich finds this out, he becomes very questioned as to what's going on here. Why is that the case? Because you weren't there. He goes, he actually strangles his father, which I found that to be like a crazy scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, as things progress with the Stranger, he's definitely pulling strings. We're asking more and more questions about who he is. He actually sends a package to Jonas, which, as we don't find out till later, but it includes a very futuristic looking flashlight that's suspect on its own. There's a Geiger counter, the letter from Jonas's father, and in a separate instance, Jonas finds in the attic, well, not the attic, in his father's studio where he worked, there's a loose board which contains a map of the Winden Caves, which is not complete.
Yeah.
The Stranger later on goes into Jonas's house and completes that map for him, shows him how to find where this tunnel is in the cave that it actually leads to the crack in time, as it's referred to. There is a door outside of this tunnel. Inscribed on it is the symbol of the Triquetra and the words in Latin, Sic Mundus Creatus Est, which in Latin, as we later learn in the series, means thus the world was created.
Yeah.
Which led to a lot of speculation between seasons as fans were left to wait years for answers. And we get to see for the first time Waller's eye has been damaged, and that becomes a running, I guess you could call it, gag through the course of the series. And we'll touch on that in later seasons for sure. The writers definitely fueled that speculation between seasons. They preyed upon people's expectations and, paid attention to where people might think down a certain alley and then, give a red herring and play with people's expectations on that front. And they did so to great degree and definitely had a lot of fun with it because there was definitely jokes in the show. Number one being Waller's eye. It's a consistent running gag.
Well, yeah, and that was why I drew like sort of the Lost comparison earlier.
Which is fair. Like there was a lot of similar kinds of speculation for Lost as well.
Mm-hmm. Like what are the clues? What are the clues? Yeah, but I would say this does it better, I think, than Lost did.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Obviously, this has the great benefit of hindsight of several years after Lost, has been out. But I do really do love this series. We also catch glimpses throughout the course of the series of the bunker at different time periods.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that this series does really well. They very naturalistically dress locations to make them readily apparent as to what time period you're in.
Yeah. Well, they use a lot of different color. It's subtle too, but I think the color grading is a little different in each. Because if I can remember the 50s time, definitely that one always seems like it's brighter.
It's kind of got like a bright tungsten, like a daylight tungsten balance.
Tungsten, tungsten would be a good
look to it. That like it's like got that kind of brighter summery look to it. Even though it is in November, the 80s kind of has like the bluish tone to it, the daylight balance tone to it, and 2019 just kind of looks like an ugly, horrible,
like
horrible drab, rainy day. But yeah, I do think that the language that the show creates, especially between seasons, is really smart because it especially as it pertains to the first season, it's really shrouding the world of Winden in like a deep tone of mystery. And because this is the earliest point in the story, we have the most amount of questions that we're asking. We know there's the least amount known about these characters, so that it's very apt and very well thought through as to what the feelings are of the audience.
Well, and tip of the hat to knowing as the story starts to branch out and go into different time periods, knowing when to cut back, the cutting back and forth between all three, when to show, when to go here, then when to go back to there. Because really, you look at it, you got like three parallel storylines, and you can write them sort of chronologically from beginning to end, but then it's like, okay, how do you weave these now together?
Yeah. And a lot of the times it does so artfully, especially in terms of montage. Almost every single ending sequence, at least the majority of the ending sequences of each episode, has some form of montage that kind of ties a lot of these crazily woven webs together, and there's similar moments. There's a lot of thematic parallels and things that they utilize. I could go into the details of them, but honestly, it's every episode, so I get lost down a spiral trying to go into specifics there. But I would say that in broad strokes, the show does that type of thing very well, especially in terms of, we mentioned the visuals and the sound design and the score and all of that. The soundtrack for this show is utterly incredible, especially this first season. But I mean, in general, the hand-picked independent music for this series is so pitch perfectly spot on. I can't even they did a good job there. And it fully encapsulates the moments that they use third-party music.
And it's too, I think it's a good thing of knowing that the music is there either to complement or challenge what's happening. It's not necessarily to just enhance, maybe is the word, just the emotion that you're already seeing, or it's not like you said before, it's not spoon feeding you be frightened now, or be happy, be whatever.
No, I would agree with that. That's a really great way to put it. It's just like it's not holding your hand. This certainly does not hold your hand in any way. At times the score can just kind of throw what you're already feeling into like another stratosphere. But I'm digging back into the plot a little bit more as things progress. We see bits and pieces of Noah. We get to really feel how formidable of a threat he is. Like, he's clearly trying to stranglehold the timeline into some form of ideology, seemingly relating to religion, but it's all very vague at this point. There's certain religious annotations to some of the dialogue that he conveys, and it's just he's clearly an adversary. And as we come to learn, he's at direct odds with Claudia Tiedemann, who we learn at some point went on a direct romp through time travel, and has been, as we learned from Bartosz later on in the series, that she's been missing for a number of years. So it becomes very intricate, and there's a lot to follow. I could definitely go very deep into all the threads here, but it's a lot. Well,
this is not a substitute for actually watching.
No, exactly,
the show.
Which I do fall down the spiral, especially in terms of things that are my favorites. I can fall down the spiral of. But the big reveal for the finality of the season is that Jonas and the stranger are actually the same person.
Yeah.
And that he's been kind of nudging and guiding Jonas along the course of this first season, trying to help him out and giving him certain philosophical nudges and details up to a certain point about the struggles that he's dealing with, but he ultimately leaves him in a bad situation, locked in the bunker. And of course, this season comes to a head whenever Jonas is thrown it vastly into the future to the year 2052. He sees a war-torn, horrid landscape, and who we later find out is Silja bops him in the face with the butt of a rifle and says, "Welcome to the future." And that sends us off on a whole other journey.
Yeah.
and as he describes it, because he can't alter the course of history for the moral benefits he sees, because it would alter his past, which would change what he's trying to do now.
Yeah. This is like a higher level of calculus. If calculus is even the appropriate type of math you would use for something when it comes to time travel.
It's like 5D chess. It's like beyond 4D chess. You're playing 5D chess.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you start getting to see like the layers of how all these things are connected and how these characters are interacting and the kinds of struggles that they're all going through, and how honestly through all of the complexity that this series has, for how simple it is. Mm-hmm. It's actually more simple than you would think that it is in a lot of ways, despite it being one of the most complex TV series ever. It's a lot, but it's deceptively simple.
Yeah. It's a well-wrapped Christmas present is the best way I can describe it, in terms of down to, you wrap a present. It doesn't necessarily be a Christmas present, but just a present, a gift.
Yes.
You know how like sometimes when you wrap something, it's like, oh, I'm lazy, I'm just going to put it in the bag, or I'm not going to wrap it, or whatever. I'm going to throw it in the grocery bag that I bought it in, or something, the store bag, the plastic bag, the paper bag, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is like someone took the time to pick out the wrapping paper, find the right box, get the creases right, get the right bow, and then stick it in a nice bag with tissue paper all around, perfect, the color well selected, and everything. And when you look at it, you're like, you could see it, you could see all the pieces, all the parts, and like you said, that simplicity is there, but it's well done.
Yeah. And there's a certain respectability to something being packaged up that well. You can forgive a lot of technical mistakes. You can forgive, a writing inconsistency here and there. But when something is presented so well and given this much care, mm-hmm. it's hard not to totally marvel at it. From somebody who's, takes a lot of time to look into things, and as you and I both watch a lot and read a lot and obsess over a lot of different things. This is one that genuinely stands out in a lot of ways. But yeah, I honestly, I cannot say enough about this series. Like I said, we're going to be getting into cycles 2 and 3 in the following week here, going through this. So there are some cool references I did want to bring up that the show brings forward. The yellow jacket that Jonas wears through the course of the series, very much a stab at little Georgie from Stephen King's It. Was largely the intention there, which as I'll get, I bring that up because it has implications for the second season, especially. So I'll get into that more in the next episode, but there's a lot of great...
Which is an interesting choice, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought it was worth mentioning, too, that the cave that's in this series actually doesn't physically exist. Like, it's not a location that they found in the woods. They actually just, built the cave on a hillside, and it was, very much a calculated thing. And I once I learned that, I thought that was so cool, because, later in the series, as the cave is brought up so many times, I'm like, wow, they did a really good cast of the cave. It looks exact. And I found out that the cave's not real. So, of course, they could duplicate it. So
nothing is real.
Nothing's real. Nothing exists. To the credit of that as well, their location scouting, redressing locations between the different time periods, all incredibly spot on. Even too, I think it's also worth noting that the Nielsen home, we see through the course of all 3 timelines that it was owned obviously by Tronte, and was also Ulrich's grown-up home as a child. But before that same house, it's not as clearly stated that was Egon Teidemann's home in the 50s. It's the same house. And it's once you start to notice that and see how all these different locations were redressed, the old folks' home was the old hospital. There's a lot of reusing things to the benefit of showing the aging and growing of Winden over the course of these many years.
That kind of brings up, which I I think the second cycle touches on a bit more, is, when you're talking about time, and places that you live now or places that you go, eventually they will be replaced by either someone else living there, or it just not being there at all, or being knocked down, something else built up in its place. It definitely gives that sense of time realism. as almost like an entity unto itself.
Yeah. Well, even too, like the watchtower that's in the woods that they go back, and Jonas and Helga both sleep a night there in the woods. It just doesn't exist in 2019 because they actually go to that same spot in the woods several times, and there's like a big power line tower there. It's just like it kind of lends to that believability of showing how like time has progressed through this town, and technology advances, buildings change, people change things around. It's just like that feels very real and naturalistic when you're watching it.
Yeah.
Just a lot of cool details and just well-rounded series. Like, even just the out front of the cave, like the chair exists in 2019. There is no chair in the 80s. In the 50s, there's a gate in front of the half in front of the cave. So like there's constantly that little bit of visual detail to help you separate the time periods.
Yeah, which is really is a big thing to do. Like it's definitely something that I always hate to say things like a lesser, or shouldn't having me put it this way, a story not shown as much care or respect might skip or forget to do those little details.
Yeah. But yeah, I obviously I could spend billions and billions of hours discussing this, even just this first season.
An eternity.
18 pages of handwritten notes on top of my already 7-page outline. Yeah, I could go off on this one for many, many, many hours. But without getting crazy deep on the plot, I do strongly, if you've made it to this point, I'm actually going to be angry with you for taking the Han route and spoiling such a great series for yourself.
To always take the Han route.
Yeah, but no, genuinely a great series. If you have not checked it out, definitely take a look, because it's one that is honestly overlooked quite a bit in terms of the high stratosphere series. It's definitely not getting the attention it deserves.
I think that comes down to just I think personally the
foreign
fact
language.
That it's a foreign film. Yeah,
which is a tough barrier to get across.
Yeah, just some people just do not want to do a dub, do subtitles, language, anything. If it's not,
honestly, any way you can watch this one, do it. But I would also say I will leave that for part 2. I'll leave that for part 2. Just an utterly great series. We'll be diving into cycle 2 here. There's shorter seasons, both 2 and 3, but way more information.
Yeah.
So we'll be getting into those in the following days, and we'll see you guys next time.
Or will we?
Or is episode 2 episode 1, and it's really episode 4?